Canes, the Carolina Hurricanes, some of the biggest newsmakers of this offseason, which I think we can all respect. If you were, and don't go back on it now, because I've heard directly from the horse's mouth from many of you, or from the horse's Twitter account from a lot of you, if you were somebody that was clamoring for the Canes to make a big move, to start putting some chips in the middle, stop stockpiling and start cashing in, don't go back on it now, right? Don't get cold feet now, because they're doing it and you got to respect that. There is one thing I absolutely love about the Canes offseason thus far, and there is one thing that I hate about the Canes offseason thus far. And there's a lot kind of neutral, but there's one on either end of the spectrum. Let's start with the love, shall we? The love for me is Eric Tulsky, Rod Brind'amour, front office, whoever that round table of decision makers is for the Carolina Hurricanes. They continue to bet on themselves and their evaluations. Right? It's very similar to one of the reasons I love Rod Brind'amour as a coach the most, is because he doesn't care about the public opinion, right? He's not running polls and making decisions. He doesn't care if it's unpopular. He is always making what he thinks is best for his team. And I think the front office is showing that. The two biggest contracts this week, or last week, K'Andre Miller, Nikolaj Ehlers, both with Carolina. Miller, to me, is a great example of them standing on their evaluation. Because they're like, and I know many of you, a lot of Rangers fans, have hinted that maybe it was an overpay, or maybe the contract was too much, or maybe, Miller can't do this or doesn't do that. And there are some legitimate reasons there, right? I think some of you are going a little far. But there are some things that he hasn't done well enough, particularly the last 2 years, since he had kind of a breakout age 23 season, that leave a little to be desired. But what the Canes are doing is betting on their own evaluation, which is, listed at 6'5", 210. Big body dude, good skater. Maybe not the most sound assignment defender in the league. Maybe gets lost occasionally. But the Canes are betting on their ability to get the most out of him in ways the Rangers couldn't or didn't over the last 2 seasons. Betting on him being in the room with some defensemen that are unbelievable at prioritizing always being in the right spot and always covering for your partner and doing those sorts of things. It's very easy to think like everybody else. It's more difficult to find somebody who has flaws and go, no, those flaws don't matter. We can fix them. Our coaches will work with them. Our culture will raise them. Once he sees how we do things and how our system is, they won't matter. To the point where it made sense to give him, $7.5 million average annual value. He did have a 43-point season a couple seasons ago. So if they get the assignment defense buttoned up, if they fix the holes in his game, there is very, very big potential there. And he is a more physical player than you'd think as well, based on what, and I'm not saying he's, Mike Tyson out there, but based on what the Rangers are saying about him, meaning Rangers fans, you'd think he didn't wear hockey gloves, he wore pillow mitts. Like he can throw some weight around. So I love that we kind of talked about this with Sam Bennett, although we knew he was never going to hit the market. Like, the dude just had, a 15-goal postseason? Nobody is looking at him and going like, I think if we get him, we can turn him into a good postseason goal scorer. It's like, no, everybody knows. Miller, there is a bit of, no, we think once we get our hands on him, we can turn him into something. We can turn him into something really good. There's big potential there, and I like the bet. Now, what did I hate? I hate they haven't yet added a second-line center in what I've dubbed the summer of getting a center. Now, granted, it's not easy, right? It's not, you don't go to the grocery store and ask somebody what aisle are the top 6 forwards in, and then you go to you look for the little flag coming off that says centers here. It's all right, cool. Let me go grab one. It's not that easy. And they still have some opportunities. We'll talk about it. But a lot of my evaluation for Ehlers is like, I love Ehlers. I think he's a really good addition. If you also get a second-line center. And by the way, even more flashy, if they would have signed Mitch Marner, right, more flashy, big ticket, I would have gone, all right, now you still got to get a second-line center. All right, now you got to get a second-line center. Frank Saravalli was on Sportsnet 510 The Fan, and I'll just read a quote here. You've got a lot of pieces that you go out and chase because they perfectly fit with Rod brind'amour. But at some point, when you add someone like Ehlers, is it too much of the same thing? I disagree with that as long as you get the second line. Like, I want as many good wingers that fit the system as possible, as long as you also get the second line centers.
I'll disagree slightly with Frank, but go on.
Well, go ahead.
Here's the thing about Nikolaj Ehlers, I think, is actually a little bit different than what the Canes have, in the sense that the Canes are known for, especially with their forwards, of like chip the puck in, go after it fast, dig it out in the corner type deal. Whereas Nikolaj Ehlers has the speed to carry the puck into the zone and actually possess the puck in a different way than what the Carolina Hurricanes other forwards are used to doing. Like Blake, Stankoven, some of the, like Martin Nook, all these guys play a very similar type game. Ehlers is a little bit different. So if anything, he brings a little bit of a different skill set than what pretty much they currently have on the roster. So I'll push back slightly on that. But if you want to just blanket, hey, guy that fits the system, a little bit undersized, okay, then I see what you're saying, but his skill set's a little bit different than what the Carolina Hurricanes currently have.
I agree with everything you just said. And the way I see them similar is production, right? Like a upper 20s, maybe 30 goal scorer, 60 points, right? Like that to me, you know, I think a lot of Canes fans want the 40 goal scorer, and that's not Ehlers. At least he hasn't shown that ability yet, and they might be betting on themselves that it's in there somewhere when playing with, you know, super unselfish other forwards, whatever it is. But it still comes back to, let's say he scores 34 goals, right? Let's say he gets 65 points. Let's say he hits his ceiling. If every time your second line is out there, you have Kokaniemi of last year, there's going to still be that giant anchor or parachute, right, when you're running, kind of holding you back. Now, I will say, I've seen some Canes fans already doing the mental gymnastics of how awesome would it be if Kokaniemi scores 60 points, or, you know, if Rod hasn't given up on him yet, then neither have I. Like, you're already talking yourself into that a little bit. I dubbed it the summer of getting a center for a reason, right? Because it's now been multiple seasons of you start getting to the games that matter, the end of the regular season, fighting for seeding, the postseason, and it seems like it's hot potato with that job. Now, a few things. One, they still have $10-something million in cap space, and you can still buy at the deadline, right? Because we've seen them the last 2 years make massive moves at the deadline for wingers. With Ehlers being signed, and with the guys they have locked up, and with Stankoven locking up in a long-term deal, you would probably argue they don't need the winger help as much. So maybe this is the deadline where you look at a team that thought they were going to compete, but now they realize they're not, and they might be selling a rental, or they might be selling somebody trying to build for the future, and you get your center there. If that happens, I will gladly go back and say, hey, that thing I hated on July 7th turned out to be nothing. They saw the field perfectly. They saw the market perfectly, and Eric Tulsky stuck to his guns and made it happen. I will gladly say that. But as it stands right now, if the roster is as it is now when they start the postseason, I'm going to go, you know, it feels like the same Achilles heel that they've been dealing with might be what they're dealing with again this year.
The biggest thing about that center market, it was slim pickings.
Very
like
much,
that's the thing.
very,
It's
very
like
much so.
You want to go Mikael Granlund, who's 34 years old, who's also 5'10", 185. Like, okay, fine, roll with that. But he got $7 million a year to go to Anaheim. Carolina wasn't going to pay $7 million a year for him. But no team in the NHL has traded for a top two center this whole offseason. So no one's done it yet.
I completely agree. And with the cap going up, it did feel, you know, I've compared centers to pickup trucks, right? Nobody gets rid of a pickup truck. You might buy a different car, but you're not trading in the pickup, because what if you have to haul something, right? What if I have to move? I need that for the mattress. Like that's kind of how everyone's treating centers. And on top of that, with the cap going up so rapidly the next 2 years, kind of everyone had the money to keep their centers that they had, that if the cap was stagnant, I do think this market would have been better, but there were a lot of re-signs. Again, I ain't saying it's easy, but if it were easy, everybody would do it, right? If it were easy to put together a 100% complete roster, Buffalo wouldn't be going on a 14-year postseason drought, right? Everybody would do it. It seemed like this year they had the resources. Now, if absolutely nothing became available, they pivoted, did what's best, at the best that they could, and they enter into the regular season with the cap space kind of stockpiled and prepared to make a move if and or when a team that has a center realizes, oh, we thought we were going to compete this year. Turns out we're not. Maybe we should cash in XYZ center. Carolina's there knocking on the door. Hey, we'll take them. We got picks. We got prospects. We got money. What are we looking at here? We'll take on guys. We'll take on cap hits. Like, what are we looking at? If that happens, again, I'll be the most happy person in the world to say July 7th, I was the Chicken Little running around saying the sky is falling, and it turns out the sky was going to be just fine.
So Eric Tulsky did say at the NHL draft, like during his availability after the first round of the draft, that every team out there is looking for players in return.
Yep.
If I'm going to give up a player, I better get players in return. My guess is if you're trying to get a top 2 center, the asking price is extremely high. And it ain't going to be cheap to go get one.
And that's why we did float this. We floated the Svech move because there was a lot of, hey, if you're going to get a top 6, you probably got to give up a top 6.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Svech was kind of that dude. If you're still in love with Svech, if you still love what he brings both on and off the ice to your team, I think it becomes very, very difficult for the team to acquire that center that we're all dreaming of.
It's going to take more than just Kotkaniemi and 2 first-round picks to go get a top 2 center, folks. Let's just. If you had a top 2 center on your team, would you take 2 first-round picks that might not play for you for 5 years in Kotkaniemi? Would you give that up? No, you wouldn't.
Especially knowing that those 2 first-round picks are coming from Dallas, who just added Mikko Rantanen and kept more than I thought they would on their roster this year, or Carolina with a second-line center that you just gave them.
Yeah.
Like, then you're, what do you want? Picks at best like 28 and 30?
Carolina's pick this
best.
year, the first-round pick, they traded it, was pick 29.
Yeah.
It's like, again, those guys aren't going to show up on your roster for another 4 years. Bradley Nadeau was the 30th overall pick, and he's only played, 2 games in the NHL at the end of the regular season? Like, come on, folks. It's going to take more than just first-round picks. It's not football.
It is, and it's not basketball for sure.
Yeah.
Last point I'll make, and it goes into what you're saying, because I've gotten a lot of these. The trade calculators online, they're in a vacuum, okay? They are not dealing with the market as it is. They've put an arbitrary value, not arbitrary, but a value on first-round picks and on players. What they haven't added in is there might only be one on the market, right? And if you're the only game in town, or there might be none on the market, and you have to Godfather offer to get the team to even consider moving on from a player, then it's not that in a vacuum trade calculator. Because just because you can get the trade calculator to say that's a fair trade, that doesn't mean the team is going to go, I accept all fair trades. If you make me a fair trade, I have to accept. They might look at you and go, no, you got to overpay by 2.5 times because I know how little there is of what I have to offer out there. And if you don't do that, then I'm walking.
I'll say this for the folks to keep this in mind. When Matthew Tkachuk of the Florida Panthers got traded from Calgary to Florida, the Florida Panthers gave up Jonathan Huberdeau, who just scored 115 points for the Florida Panthers, and Mackenzie Weegar, who is a top 4 defenseman and a prospect and a first-round pick, to get Matthew Tkachuk, who's a winger. And that was just a few years ago.
Do you know what? And I keep saying this is the last thing I'm going to say. I'm just excited because they added a lot of value, I believe. I think Eric Tulsky has that crazy gene, positively, right? Because you got to be a little wild to pull the trigger on a move like that, right? And actually, I think the league respects, and again, positively, respects Eric Tulsky's crazy. I'm sure you read the rumors or the reports that Evan Bouchard, his re-signing was accelerated because of the threat of a Carolina offer sheet.
Yeah, Evan Bouchard of the Edmonton Oilers.
Like the league is looking around and going, Eric Tulsky's liable to do anything.
Oh yeah.
So let's make sure we get our P's and Q's dotted and crossed and everything else. And that's the wrong letters there. But let's make sure we have our side buttoned up and don't leave him even a cracked window to force his way through. I think that's a really exciting deal for the Carolina Hurricanes to have a GM willing to do that, because as you just mentioned, I mean, even knowing how Tkachuk has worked out for the Florida Panthers, which is gangbusters, that still sounds like, goodness gracious, that's a lot to give up for a player. But you got to stick to your guns and make the move.